So, one of the most frequent questions that I get asked by friends, family, or viewers is how much money should I invest in the stock market? Some of us see the stock market as a place where only big money can play, where you have to have deep pockets to even have a seat at the table. But in today's world, anyone can actually start investing with as little as $1. The first thing you need to understand about getting started investing in the stock market is that you can definitely start with a small amount of money. I mean, myself, only a short number of years ago, started with just a few $100s in my tax-free savings account. And actually, it turns out that starting to invest earlier in life, even if you invest less money, actually beats starting to invest later in life with more money. That's because of the power of compound interest. You can kind of think of it like this ball, and if you get that ball rolling earlier, it means that you're giving it more time for it to essentially pick up speed and become more powerful. So the fact that you're even asking this question, how much money should I invest, makes me really excited because I know how life-changing this question can be once it finally gets answered and once you actually get started investing. So now let's actually get into the meat and potatoes here. Can you really start investing with just $1, or is there some other kind of threshold in terms of dollar value that you should hit before you start investing? Or maybe is there some other kind of framework we can use to better answer this question? It turns out there's no magic dollar value you should reach to start investing your money, but there is a really great 4-step roadmap we can walk through together to make sure you should be investing your money. If you follow these steps, you can rest assured that you're following a legitimate financial plan that's fairly bulletproof and you won't be accidentally investing money you shouldn't have. So here's how we should think about this. I have this jug here and it's going to represent our financial responsibilities. And I'm going to be pouring water into this jug. This water is going to represent our income. Now you can see on the jar that there's various levels. Each level is a different financial goal for us to hit to be able to responsibly move on to the next one. So let's start. Let's say that we earn an amount of income that leaves us about here. So you can see that we've earned enough income that we've been able to cover our basic living expenses, which are things like food, clothing, and shelter. But unfortunately, we don't have enough money to be able to pay down our high interest debt. This could mean you currently have a credit card balance that you're paying interest on that you haven't been able to pay down yet. If this is where you're at, then unfortunately I can't in good conscience give you the green light to invest yet. This type of debt really needs to be taken care of first because the interest rate on this debt will be like a peregrine falcon next to a sloth. Did you know cheetahs aren't the fastest animal on earth? It's actually the peregrine falcon if you include birds. Alright, moving on. Let's see where more income will get us. Okay, so now we've covered our basic living expenses as well as our high interest debt, which puts us on the threshold of something that is very, very important that a lot of people skip over. The emergency fund. Look, there's no way around it. Emergency funds aren't sexy, flashy, or cool, okay? But speaking of cool, this is a new air conditioner we just bought. Now you're probably thinking, fantastic, Steve, but how is this relevant? Well, our old air conditioner basically reached the end of its life, and just in time for a massive heat wave that's been sweeping through the city. It was so hot at one point that we even just left some dough out on the counter and it just baked itself into a loaf of bread. Rate that joke in the comments down below. I'd give it like a 3 out of 10. Anyway, we were able to go out and buy this new air conditioner, which is really fancy. It's got an app, you can program it and all this stuff. Technology is pretty cool these days. But anyway, we were able to go out and buy it because we had an emergency fund in place that was set aside for things exactly like this. So please do yourself a favor and set yourself aside some money for rainy days just like this. And now let's get back to the good stuff. Finally, we've covered our essential living expenses, high interest debt is gone, and the emergency fund is locked and loaded. All this excess money spilling out everywhere is now free to invest. So really the question, how much should you invest, is actually best asked as when is it right for me to invest? Because if you're in the position to invest like I just showed you, then it's really up to you how much money you want to invest in the stock market. With one caveat. The catch with any money that you want to invest in the stock market is that you should not need to touch it for at least 5 years. But really, I'd say that you should give yourself at least 10 years for an ideal situation. That's because the stock market kind of goes like this over time. It cycles up and then it cycles down. But the problem is that nobody can accurately predict when it's going to cycle up and when it's going to cycle down. So what if you did something like this? What if you invested your money here and then after 3 years you wanted to take your money out of the stock market? Well, that would put you at this point here, which means that you would have taken a loss on that investment. But here's the cool part. While the stock market definitely does cycle up and down, over longer and longer periods of time, that cycling up and down actually overall trends upwards. That means the longer you keep your money invested, the better the chances of your success are. For example, let's look at like a really bad case scenario. Let's say that you invested your money right at the peak of the stock market before the Great Recession in 2008. From that point on, as measured by the S&P 500 index, your investment would go on to lose about half of its value. In this situation, you wouldn't even break even on your money until about 5 years later in March of 2013. But what if instead of investing your money for just 5 years, you invested it for 10 years? Well, now, all the way 10 years later, not only would you have made all your money back, but you'd also have a 60% positive return on your money. See how big of a difference this makes? Even if you invested your money right before a market crash, so right at the worst possible time pretty much, if you invested your money for at least 10 years, you would have still earned a really nice return on your investment. Another thing you can do to make a massive difference in your investments is to regularly contribute to them. So remember that jug earlier where the water was basically spilling out everywhere? That water or that excess income that's spilling out after you've taken care of all your other responsibilities can be invested in the stock market. Let's see how that can impact our investments. So let's start with a base scenario where we'll say we invested $10,000 for 30 years and we earned a rate of return on our investments of 7%. This means that our investment would grow to about $81,000 over that time period. That's an 8-fold return. I mean, the power of compound interest is just amazing. But do you know what's even more amazing? Let's say we not only invested that initial $10,000, but let's also say that we added a small amount of money to that every single month for those 30 years as well. Let's say something like just, how about $100 per month we'll throw into that investment. Now, how much do you think it would be worth after 30 years? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. And remember, we're just adding $100 per month, nothing crazy. Okay, time's up. Let's see. So after that 30-year period, adding just $100 more per month, your investment would grow to be over $200,000 now. you are approaching about $250,000. That's crazy. Just by adding an additional $100 per month to that investment, you've more than doubled it. Now, perhaps just as important as investing your money for a long enough period of time and contributing to your investments regularly is to know what your risk tolerance is for your investments. Now, I've actually done a pretty comprehensive yet very understandable guide on how to determine your risk tolerance that I will put a little pop-up for somewhere around here that you can click on if you'd like to check that out, because I think it'll be very helpful for you if you're just starting out. Now, last but not least, what should you actually invest your money in? Well, if you're looking for an investment that's properly diversified, holds the biggest and strongest companies, pays you dividends, and outperforms over 90% of professional money managers, then look no farther than index fund ETFs. If you're interested about learning more about how to invest in this way, again, I'll put a little pop-up here for a tutorial that I did that basically covers everything you need to know. But there is actually another really simple way to get started in the stock market using everything I've talked about in this video today, and I'm going to be releasing a video on that soon, and I'm really excited about it. I'm so pumped to share this with you guys, so keep an eye out for that one too. Now let's recap today's key takeaways quickly, and honestly it might be worth you writing or typing these down so that you can refer back to them, because if you just follow these simple principles, I mean, you'll be golden. Number 1, only invest money after covering your living expenses, high interest debt, and building an emergency fund. Number 2, only invest money that you won't need to touch for at least 5 years, but ideally more than 10. Number 3, contribute regularly to your investments, with the more being better. Number 4, determine your risk tolerance and stick to it. Number 5, choose index ETFs that match your goals as determined by your risk tolerance. And number 6, profit. And with all that being said, that's going to be it for me today. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you're not already, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon.